How did the Yoruba man become ruler in Tivland? And why was he jailed after rebellion? And what does that mean for Yoruba diaspora, Yoruba land, northern Nigeria and Nigeria itself? In the shadows of empire, power was won like a borrowed crown. As the British redrew Nigeria's political map, they didn't just administer, they appointed. In cities across northern Nigeria, Yoruba chiefs were installed, far from home and closer to imperial interests. The dawn of the 20th century cast a long shadow over Nigeria, ushering in an era of profound transformation under British colonial rule. While often romanticized as a period of development, it was fundamentally an era of imposition, where traditional power structures were often reshaped and sometimes entirely circumvented. In areas where existing leadership structures were deemed inadequate, or where the British sought to exert greater control, they often resorted to appointing their own agents, and sometimes these agents were drawn from groups perceived as more cooperative or simply more familiar to the British. In the early 20th century, British indirect rule leaned heavily on native authority, where there were no pre-existing structures. The Crown created them, often selecting loyal individuals from the Yoruba ethnic group to act as chiefs in the northern towns with growing migrant populations. The British utilized the services of the Yoruba in the conquest of northern Nigeria. Some Yoruba served as spies, commercial agents, and members of the West African Frontier Force. When Lord Lugard took over the colonial administration from the Royal Niger Company, its constabulary was absorbed into the West African Frontier Force, which was formed in 1989. For a long period, the force remained largely dominated by the Hausa and Yorubas. The civil government police force, raised for the north, included the Yoruba in its service. The British utilized the services of the Yoruba in the conquest of northern Nigeria. Some Yoruba served as spies, commercial agents, and members of the West African Frontier Force. In 1900, when Lord Lugard took over the colonial administration from the Royal Niger Company, its constabulary was absorbed into the West African Frontier Force, which was formed in 1989. For a long period, the force remained largely dominated by the Hausa and Yorubas. The civil government police force, raised for the north, included the Yoruba in its service. In 1908, the force was made up of 240 Hausa, 216 Yoruba, and 102 Beriberi, 53 Fulani, 25 Nukwe, and 54 others. In Kano, by 1914, the government police were composed entirely of Yoruba ethnic group. As Yoruba individuals migrated north for economic opportunities, as clerks, railway workers, and traders, they also inadvertently became part of the colonial administrative machinery. Their relatively higher literacy rates in English, their familiarity with Western administrative practices, and their perceived modernity by the British made them attractive candidates for certain roles. The British, often with a limited understanding of local customs, found it convenient to appoint Yoruba individuals as warrant chiefs, native court presidents, or even headmen in non-Yoruba speaking areas, especially within the context of a growing colonial bureaucracy. This imposition of Yoruba chiefs, particularly in areas with distinct indigenous leadership, often sows seeds of discontent and resentment. For the local populace, these appointed figures lacked traditional legitimacy and were seen as instruments of colonial power. Their authority was derived from the British, not from the consent of the people they were meant to govern. This created a complex dynamic where Yoruba individuals, perhaps himself a migrant, was placed in a position of power over a non-Yoruba community, often tasked with enforcing unpopular colonial decrees like tax collection. Some of the Yoruba who served gallantly in the British Army were rewarded with administrative positions in northern Nigeria. In the non-Muslim areas of northern Nigeria, the British imposed non-indigenous chiefs on the people for the purposes of suppressing rebellion and collection of taxes. For example, in the Abensi division of Tivland, Audu Dan Afonja, a Yoruba Muslim from Ilorin, was imposed as a chief of Makurdi between 1914 and 1947. He had formerly served as a British agent and spy in the area. In Dekina, Amodu, a Yoruba, was imposed as the Onu of Dekina between 1914 and 1918 as a member of WAFF in the conquest of Igala land. His rule was tyrannical and full of extortion. In 1916, he arbitrarily raised taxes from 1 shilling to 10 shillings per adult male. His rule ended in turmoil, and he was eventually sentenced to The British policy of appointing outsider chiefs, including Yoruba, has significantly long-term consequences for inter-ethnic relations. It inadvertently created a layer of division, positioning the Yoruba chiefs as agents of an alien power, rather than an integral member of the local community. That was the cause of imposing chiefs. The new chiefs, while respected by fellow Yoruba migrants, struggled with acceptance in predominantly Hausa-Fulani spaces. Their powers were limited, and their legitimacy constantly questioned. While many individual Yoruba migrants sought peaceful coexistence and integration, the official policy of installing their kinsmen in position of authority complicated these relationships, sometimes leading to friction and misunderstandings that persisted even beyond colonial rule. But what of the Yoruba chiefs themselves? They were often caught in a difficult position, tasked by the British with enforcing policies that might be unpopular, while simultaneously trying to navigate their own identity and place within a new community. Their authority was fragile, resting solely on British backing. They often faced the unenviable task of balancing loyalty to their colonial patrons with the need to maintain some semblance of acceptance from the communities they govern. Even after Nigeria gained independence, the impact of these colonial administrative choices lingered. The historical memory of imposed chiefs, whether Yoruba or from other groups, continued to inform local perceptions of power and outsiders. Understanding this specific aspect of British colonial policy is crucial to grasping the deeper complexity of inter-ethnic relations and political dynamics in modern Nigeria. It highlights how seemingly minor administrative decisions could have profound and lasting societal repercussions. Works that shed light on such nuanced aspects of the Yoruba diaspora forces us to look beyond simplistic narratives of migration. It compels us to examine the specific role of colonial imposition and its often unseen consequences. By studying these historical impositions, we gain deeper understanding of the present, recognizing how past policies continue to shape contemporary realities and fostering a more informed dialogue about identity, power, and shared history in Nigeria. The story of the Yoruba in northern Nigeria is not just one of migration and adaptation. It is also a story of deeply intertwined with the calculated strategies of colonial power. The imposition of chiefs, a seemingly minor administrative detail, serves as a powerful reminder of how colonial rules sought to reorder societies, often at the expense of established traditions and inter-community harmony. By confronting these difficult truths and by acknowledging the complexity of our shared past, we can better appreciate the resilience of the Nigerian people and work towards a more cohesive future.